Hey everyone, I'm Lauren Conlin, and welcome to Pop Crime TV's The Outlier podcast. Today I have a really special episode. I'm going to be joined by Olivia Crist Grant and Lauren Andrade, who are the filmmakers behind Investigation Discovery's new, very chilling docuseries, Ruby and Jodi, A Cult of Sin and Influence. And look, if you're like me, and you've been following this very disturbing case from the start, literally since 2022 or 2023, you might think you know everything, but trust me, you definitely don't. And this docuseries really proves it. So it's 4 parts and it premiered on Monday, September 1st, the first 2 episodes, with the next 2 episodes premiering tonight, September 2nd on ID. And then you can catch up on HBO Max after if you missed it. But this dives, obviously, into the toxic bond of Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt, but it goes beyond. You actually hear from other people who Jodi, quote unquote, I'm going to say duped, because that's where we're at with this case. But just a quick refresher on Ruby Franke. She was the Mormon mommy vlogger. She founded the 8 Passengers YouTube channel with her husband, Kevin Franke. They exploited their 6 children in pretty rough ways towards the end. And her therapist that she ended up finding, Jodi Hildebrandt, disgraced rogue therapist. But the two, Jodi and Ruby, were arrested in 2023 for aggravated child abuse after subjecting Ruby Franke's children to starvation, confinement under the guise of, quote, strict parenting, and Hildebrandt's very manipulative connections program, which reminds me of a cult. I'm pretty sure it is a cult, and it was a cult, but now they're both serving prison sentences. And this docuseries and this story exposes this dark world of control and brutality and so much more. So with that being said, I'm going to shut up and bring in Olivia and Lauren to discuss this further. Hello, Olivia and Lauren. It's so nice to meet you. I'm going to try to make this easy and sort of say your name when I ask you guys questions, I guess. But Olivia, I'll start with you. I have been fascinated by this case. It's so disturbing. And I loved how you guys spliced in the Lori Vallow Daybell connections. I mean, there's so many similarities with these, I don't want to group everyone in one bucket, but these Mormon moms and religion. So what initially drew you to this project? Because I'm just going to also say, there have been documentaries on Ruby and Jodi. So what drew you to this one?
Yeah, I think for Lauren and myself, based on our last project that we did that kind of explored the world of reality TV as sort of one facet of that story, and how, children and media and faith and all those sorts of components together can create a really exploitative and abusive environment. And kind of the next phase after that, after reality TV, is kind of like this new media, right? This family vlogging sort of sphere. So that's what we initially sought out to do, was just explore this new sort of world. And then it hit the news that Ruby and Jodi had been arrested. And then that kind of reshaped our focus a little bit. You have the family vlogging element. But to your point, there's been pieces before done on Ruby, and I think we were really keen to explore who is Jodi Hildebrandt, and that's kind of where we started.
Yes, and like I said, I loved that you layered in just some new people that we hadn't necessarily heard from before. I follow a lot of these lawsuits. I saw, when Kevin, Ruby's husband, sued Jodi, but I completely missed the racketeering lawsuit. I'm blanking on his name. It was Michael. I forget. Yeah, his last name, Tillman, I believe. But yes, he brought forth this racketeering lawsuit against Ruby and Jodi. And I was like, oh my gosh, I think he has a point. I mean, Lauren, when you saw that there was actually a racketeering conspiracy lawsuit, I mean, did you think it was crazy? Did you think it was valid?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it was very valid. I think something that we uncovered with talking to multiple victims of Jodi was that there were so many patterns here. That she really did have a playbook and a organization. This wasn't just a one-off with one family. This has been going on for decades, and there are structures in place to allow her to keep doing the things that she's been doing. So I think, yeah, unfortunately, there was a lot of validity to that story.
Yeah, it's really sad, I guess, how adults can sort of just sink their hooks into other adults that they find to be easily manipulated, I guess. And I don't, sometimes I wonder if Jodi saw that in Ruby or if she saw dollar signs, right? She had her successful channel. Olivia, I don't know what you gathered. I mean, you guys got to interview Jodi Hildebrandt, Jodi's niece, who experienced severe abuse, and it must have been tough to get some of this stuff out of her because it is still so fresh. I would think, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think that, with Jodi Hildebrandt in particular, what they experienced as a teenager, that kind of abuse is a life sentence. I know Jodi and Ruby are spending, we don't know how long, parole is up in December, right? So we'll figure out what happens there. But a lot of these victims have to serve a life sentence of trauma, and of dealing with the aftermath of, what Jodi or, Ruby has done. And I'm forgetting your original question there.
Well, to your credit, there wasn't really a question. It was more like me commenting and being like,
Yeah.
"Is that right?" But no, you make a lot of good points, and just you bring up parole. I think something that I actually worry about is I think Kevin Franke is a huge. I mean, if I want to say really what I'm thinking, I mean he's a simp for his wife. I feel like he cares about his wife more than his kids, and this is just me following him, following interviews he's done, and just his actions. Like he doesn't even name his wife on this lawsuit at all. He just completely blames Jodi, and I don't think that's fair. So I guess I am nervous. I mean, most people don't get parole, on the first try. But I feel like he's going to come out there and be like, "Look, she's really sorry. She's so sorry." And it's like, I don't know. Stick up for your kids. Don't stick up for your abusive wife. But I don't know how you guys feel about that, Lauren.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's honestly, it's so complicated and complex, and something that, with every single story that we've gone through, there's a fine line when dealing with like such deep coercive manipulation. It's really difficult, I think, to say like who really is to blame. It's just like it's so nuanced. So that one honestly is like really challenging for me to even discern.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're really good. Olivia, do you have anything to add? You're being very
Yeah.
diplomatic. I love it. I love it.
No, I think that the Kevin Franke piece of this is honestly a misunderstood piece of this story. And I think that once you realize who Jodi is and the patterns, and the abuse that she's inflicted on multiple families, not just the Frankies over the years, you'll realize what sort of power and control and sort of a wield she had over these individuals. And that's not to exonerate anyone, right? But I think that if we, kind of live in this world of like bad, good, right? We're not trying to understand how this happened, right? And I think that that's what we really wanted to explore in the series. Like, why hasn't Kevin seen his kids in a year? What sort of patterns of manipulation and control were happening behind the scenes during this time? So yeah, I think that, to Lauren's point, it's a very complicated question, but I think that, in a documentary series, we're really interested to explore, like, behind the curtain, like what was actually going on there.
Yeah, and you guys, you really do a phenomenal job of that. And it's tough. It's tough to watch. I mean, you definitely don't shy away of what was happening to those kids. And there are tough moments even before Jodi Hildebrandt, comes on the scene. I mean, my kids are my youngest is almost 7, but I literally, I yell at my kids. I'm not, I'm definitely not like a perfect mom, but I really truly can't imagine threatening to cut the head off of one of my kids' stuffed animals. I mean, that was before she met Jodi, which I guess kind of tells me like, okay, she kind of had it in her, right?
Oh yeah. No, for sure. I think that Ruby had sort of these darker impulses, right? We see from their family vlogging and stuff like that. And to your point earlier, like, yeah, Kevin went along with it, right? Like he was also cashing in on this sort of like family vlogging empire. And I think that when Ruby met Jodi, Jodi gave Ruby permission to explore the darkest parts of herself.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think you're totally right on that. And when you guys were making this film, did anything really shock you as you were in production for this, Lauren or Olivia?
Yeah, I think the most shocking was just like how long this has been going on, how many families this has impacted. When we were in production, we would just be walking into stores and people would ask, what are you working on? And we would briefly bring this up, and the amount of reactions that we got just from the locals, people who were saying, oh, this impacted my friend, this impacted a family member. It's so widespread. It's been going on for so long. And I think also just the parallels to each story, it's almost like you're hearing from the same person every single time. And I think that's what's so shocking and creepy about it, is that, it is really, it's been like this giant machine that's been operating in plain sight for so long.
Yeah. Olivia, do you have anything to add that shocked you?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely being in the field and being local with people. It's like, oh yeah, my so-and-so went to see Jodi and now they're divorced. I mean, it's just the wreckage this woman has caused is insane. And I think too, just like her ability to even be licensed for so long. She did get her license put on probation for 18 months. It was reinstated. But I think when that happened, it was kind of like, well, I don't have to follow the rules of, a licensing board anymore. I'm going to really dive deep into this life coaching thing and connections. And now I don't have to follow any regulations. So that made her even more dangerous, even more predatory.
Mm-hmm. That's terrifying to think about. Do you guys think that there was a sexual relationship going on between Ruby and Jodi? I mean, I do, but just curious your thoughts.
I think there's definitely something intimate, whether that was sexual or emotional. There's clearly something going on. I mean, you can see in the videos, you can see in photos, you can see how they speak to each other. There's definitely something interesting happening.
Yeah, definitely. Olivia?
Yeah, no, I would agree. And I think, if you've read Sherry Franke's book, I think that she definitely points to that relationship as well, whether it was like more Jodi, more Ruby, reciprocal. Like, I don't think we'll ever know the details fully, but definitely, certainly an emotional sort of affair relationship going on at the very least.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I do think it was physical as well, but that's me. That's my opinion, based on some of the research that I've done. I mean, it is funny. You guys describe it as this like magnetic connection, which I don't think I've ever described having a magnetic connection with anybody that I wasn't in a romantic relationship with, right? I mean, not you guys specifically, but just in general. But yeah, I mean, how much did you guys have to do, I guess, research wise on the Mormon religion as you're making this film?
Yeah. Lauren, you want to speak to it?
Yeah, no, I was going to say, obviously, I've heard and seen Mormonism within like the media and pop culture. But beyond that, this was really like a massive crash course for me to really dive deep into the religion. Some of our subjects were kind and gracious enough to give, a top level overview. And then we went and did our homework But yeah, it was definitely a crash course into this massive religion.
Mm.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Definitely a crash course. It's funny because I feel like when you're with a bunch of folks and within the LDS faith, or who have left, there's certain terminology and words that get thrown out all the time, and you're kind of like, wait, what is that? Like, it was constantly just trying to like play catch up.
Yes.
But no, I think it was fascinating, and I think that you really can't tell this story without talking about the Mormon Church. Because I think that, not to go too off on a tangent, but I think that there is sort of this bedrock of shame that exists within the church. And, that's not solely, the LDS faith. It happens in Catholicism and so many other places. But I think that's what Jodi was able to hone in on and really weaponize, is this notion of shame, and sexual shame.
Yeah, I think, yeah, you nailed it. You totally nailed it. Now, I'm sure you did, but what kind of responses did you get from the Franke family if you reached out for participation?
Yeah, they were open. They were kind. The majority of them were under contract for. There was another documentary that came out, so we couldn't really ask them to participate. But any interactions that we did have was perfectly friendly and fine.
Oh, even Kevin?
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if he was okay. He's under
No,
contract.
he was under. Yeah, he was under contract. But he was very open and gracious. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I know I keep going back to him. I'm just fascinated by this guy because I go back to, like, your spouse is your spouse, you love them, but your kids are your kids. So I get it. You want to stand by them, your spouse, whatever. But these kids, again, I felt like they were weeks away from death, days away from death. So the fact that I kind of just felt like he didn't do what I would expect a father to do, and he didn't act the way, in my opinion, a father should act. Not that my opinion really matters. And I think it was maybe in 2024, after one of the docs came out, Chad, who was the oldest son, I believe, he came out and said, I love my father. My father's done everything right, type of thing. And I'm like, really? Okay. I mean, if you guys have a great relationship, then fine. But yeah, I would imagine there's just so much to rebuild, between Kevin and his children at this point.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, what happened is a horrible, horrific crime, obviously. And anything that involves kids is just, I mean, it's unthinkable. I think that, the sort of rage that people feel, towards Kevin, and certainly towards Ruby and Jodi, is valid, right? Like, when you see a horrible crime happen, the next question is like, well, why didn't, the parents step in to, or in this case, Kevin stepped in to protect? But I think that, and that's all valid. But when you kind of step back and look deeper into the situation, I think that the entrance of Jodi, into that family, was really the catalyst for this to happen. Not to say that Ruby and Kevin weren't exploiting their kids online, or, as we find out in, the last series that came out, there was abuse happening in that household, right?
Yeah.
However, when you have a therapist coming in, capitalizing on this bedrock of shame within the Mormon Church, and then telling someone and convincing them that they are bad, that they are evil, that they must isolate, that they are actually a threat to their family. In the Mormon Church, the family is eternal. So you're not only, you're not living for this life necessarily, you're living for the next one. And I think that was another thing that is super important to understand when Jodi is isolating Kevin from his family and telling him he's bad. Well, the only way you're going to get back in with your family, your eternal family, is to repent and to not speak to me, and to not speak to Ruby, and to not speak to the kids. So I think that, again, and I'm just rambling at this point, but
No, it's fascinating.
I I think the rage is valid, but at the same time, there's so much more nuance to this story than I think people want to really explore. And I think by exploring that and understanding what happened, we can try to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
I think my rage doesn't necessarily come from him leaving and when it was going on. I acknowledge that he didn't know they were brainwashed. I think my rage is just after. I guess that's my whole thing. I think, you know, it's just his behavior, his reactions, his interviews, everything he says after. I'm just like, what? I mean, and this is I guess, I don't know if this is a good comparison or not, but the catfish mom, Kendra Lakari, you know, I felt that dad. I was like, yes. I was like, yes, yes, yes. Divorce her ass. Get away. You know what I mean? Like she damaged your children mentally, you know, or their child physically, mentally, whatever. I just didn't get that type of rage from Kevin that I wanted. And again, I understand it's, you know, it's their situation, but yeah, I fully acknowledge that Jodi did some crazy manipulation there. But I want to ask you guys, is there anything that you kind of had to cut out that you didn't want to? Anything you can tell us about that didn't make it in that maybe you wish should have? I know. I'm putting you on the spot. I'm putting you on the spot. Or if they're like, no, that's too racy. That's too, I don't know.
I have a few. I mean, I mean, when you make a documentary series that's 4 episodes and this woman has been an active licensed therapist at that in Utah for decades, there are other people who we wanted to interview that we just didn't, or like they came in too late in the production. They just didn't have time. And that'll always be something we're like, damn, like I wish we could have interviewed that person, or, you know, their story also deserves to be told. So I think that it's more like, you know, who are the other folks that, you know, we can also learn about their stories. But you only have so much time in 4 episodes. So
Right. Lauren, do you have anything?
Yeah, no, I would just wholeheartedly agree with that. I think it's just like, yeah, wishing we had more time and space to be able to tell more stories. But like Olivia said, it's limited, and, you know, we're grateful for the people that we did get. So,
you know, you could probably start a podcast with God. Like, I mean, there's probably so many couples, so many people that have had horrendous experiences with Jodi that took years of therapy to undo, I'm sure. So I cannot imagine. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm just really excited for people to watch this because like I said, it was so well done. You layered in new information, you know, that I didn't know about. And I really thought I knew everything about this case and this story. And I was totally wrong. So I want to thank you guys for that. And I want to point everyone to Investigation Discovery. You must watch A Cult of Sin and Influence because your worlds will be rocked. Olivia, Lauren, how can people find you if they want to follow you anywhere and follow your work?
Yeah, we have a Instagram account for our business, Chick Entertainment. You can find us there on Instagram.
Chick Entertainment. I love it. Okay, I'll pop it into the episode notes as well. All right. Well, thank you guys so much again. Hopefully our paths will cross, and thank you for making this really, really interesting and eye-opening documentary.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lauren.